Hi everyone, this is Melissa McCart from the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training. I'm here today to talk with you about a program called Concussion in the Classroom, Best Practices for School Success. I lead up the Oregon TBI teams as well as help in the development of products and supports that come out of CBERT. So if you have any questions about what I do, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'll just get going on sharing this information with you today. So what I'm going to talk about is the program, like I said, Concussion in the Classroom, supporting students with TBI. I'm going to give a little bit of a background about TBI and why this is an important product or tool for you to use. I'm going to talk a little bit about the development and about the training, and then about the evaluation, so you can see the evidence that we have in our two studies for supporting that this actually creates knowledge in educators. A little bit about CBERT. CBERT is, like I said, the Center for Brain Injury Research and Training. We're out of the University of Oregon. We have some state programs. I didn't have them all listed here, but I specifically work with the Oregon TBI team, which is the team of educators that supports students and teachers as they recover from brain injury or unfortunately have lasting issues with brain injury. CBERT also does research in hospital to school transition, post-school experience, and interventions to support children at home and school. And what we're going to talk about today is one of those interventions. So a little bit of background and just a couple stories to kind of set the stage about why this is important. So this is a young man named Christopher, and Christopher suffered a TBI a few years back. So you can see on the screen, he's holding his bicycle wheel. And so what happened was Christopher was riding his bicycle home from school, and his parents were doing all the right things. Dad was following him in his truck to make sure that Christopher knew the route home. And little brother was riding his bicycle with him. They were practicing, how to get home safely from school. It wasn't very far. And all of a sudden, the fork completely broke on Christopher's bike. You can see that it just completely sheared here. And Christopher went face first into the concrete. And, little brothers being little brothers trying to keep up with big brothers ended up running big brother right over. So that's how the injury occurred. Christopher proceeded to have some issues. So mother says Christopher looks normal, but not all wounds are visible. And then in school, things like inconsistency of academic achievement would happen. So things like, you can see here, sometimes he tests at a 6.8 reading level, and other days he tests at a 3.0, and they think he's just not trying. So that's something that's really common with students who have brain injury. And with Christopher, it kind of depended on how he was doing that day. So, if he had a headache or he had medical procedures or, he just wasn't feeling great, his reading level would be different. And it was kind of like that across the board for him, hit and miss as to his academic performance. I don't know how many of you have ever seen this, but his physician said the school needs to give him a one-on-one aid. Christopher didn't need a one-on-one aid. He just needed some supports to make sure that he was doing okay in school. And that one-on-one aid piece kind of set the stage for some controversy. His principal said he struggled before his injuries. Nothing's changed. I don't see why we need to do anything for him. So Christopher was, kind of a busy young man and had some, wiggles. I wouldn't say he was struggling, but he was certainly a young man who needed some redirection occasionally about things like staying in his seat and whatnot. But his brain injury really made all of those things worse. So he was struggling at school. Then we have Emily. This is another typical story. Emily was at the time of this, was a high school sophomore. She has a really strong identity as a volleyball player, and she's currently dealing with her second concussion. So after her second concussion, she was cleared to play sports by her doctor, and she was playing club volleyball. But while she was cleared to play, she was still having shortened days at school. She still had school accommodations. She was spending most of her day in the counselor's office because of headaches and nausea and general not feeling well. And it turns out she was failing all but one of her classes and was having difficulty with vision and fatigue. So I got called into her 504 meeting. I went to the 504 meeting, and the educators were not sure what was going on with her or why she was not doing too well. They were trying really hard to support her, but not being very successful in those attempts. So educators were frustrated, as was Emily and her family frustrated. So at the 504 meeting, the family explains Emily's concussion, and the team's able to come up with a plan. They continued training and support for the school staff, and now Emily is doing much better. My point in sharing this is kind of setting the stage for what's happening in schools and with education programs and why teachers need, and all people in education need, training around TBI. In that, when we first attended the meeting, people really didn't know what to do for her. And after a little bit of help, a little bit of consultation, they were able to use all the great skills educators already have to put in place a support plan for Emily, where Emily was able to be successful in school. So a little bit about the state of education in TBI. So in 2012, Siebert did a survey of educators looking at participants in the number of 352. We found that 85% had worked with students with brain injury. 62% of this participation group were general educators, special educators, and 38% were general educators. 75% had a master's degree, so a very educated group of teachers and educators. So what we found, even with that though, was that 75% of those 352 educators had not had any training in brain injury or TBI and helping students return to school. So there's a need for training. So then we thought, okay, well, let's look at school psychologists and see what their level of training is. So in 2014, we got a participant pool of 232 school psychologists, and we looked at knowledge and self-perception. We found that 88% of this population had worked with students with TBI, and 78% had a master's degree or higher. So when we asked them if they've had training in brain injury or TBI, 57% said that they had zero training in brain injury, and 43% had anything from viewing a poster presentation to doing some coursework. So we asked them some questions. We said, are you qualified to differentiate between students with TBI and students with other disabilities? And 48% said yes. 47% said they were able to provide a school with information about TBI, but only 27% felt comfortable serving as an individual education plan case manager. So there was still growth needed with school psychologists in terms of training. Now, we know school psychologists have a lot of amazing skills that could easily generalize to working with and evaluating students with brain injury, but they didn't feel that they had all of the needed training to do those things. So then we thought, okay, well, let's look at state special ed directors. And so we got 43 state level special ed directors and asked them similar questions, and found that 55% of the state special education directors reported that TBI count for their state was inaccurate. So in terms of eligibility within their special ed populations, many of them didn't feel strongly about the accuracy of their count. So we asked why. So the answers we got from the special ed directors were there's a lack of awareness about TBI, there's a lack of communication between the hospital and schools when a student's injured, and students are identified under different eligibility categories, meaning things like other health impaired or learning disabilities or behavioral disabilities, those kind of things, but maybe not identified as a student with a brain injury. So then we decided we were going to follow some kids and see what happens. So we looked at 21 cases of students, families, and teachers, and we followed them and asked them a bunch of questions, did interviews and observations and about their transition from hospital to school and what that was like. So summary of a lot of work and a lot of student files. Is that hospital to school transition, meaning did the hospital connect with the school or provide information to the school following the injury? We found that only made a difference if when the school received the students, that the educators who were working with the students had adequate training to be able to provide accommodations and modifications and supports for those students. So even if there was communication, we still needed people on the receiving end to know what to do with those students. And we found that if there was no educator training, hospital to school transition made little to no difference in terms of what the student received at the school level for accommodations, modifications, temporary supports, those kind of things. So what really, really was important was making sure that those staff that were working with the kids had a base in brain injury and what that meant in terms of providing supports for students. So we thought, okay, let's look at some of the research around this and see what we can find. So what we found is that this lack of training and for people in the education field is historically documented. So we asked a lot of questions of people who've been doing this work for a really long time and looked at actual research. So we got back as far as about 1984 at an NHIF meeting, finding quotes that say we need effective teacher training. Research in 1998 or 1988, school psychologists have not been trained. 1991, very few educators received training for working with students with TBI. Then in 1998, effective programs for students with TBI include increasing teacher capacity and services. 1997, educators have misconceptions in the area of coma, memory, and new learning. I have pages of this. This is just the select ones that we're sharing. 2001, teacher training in TBI is critical. 2004, endorsed misconceptions about TBI indicating a lack of knowledge about moderate to severe TBI. 2005, the need for teacher training remains strong. 2010, educators need training in methods validated for students with TBI. 2012, 75% of teachers never received training on TBI. 2015, children with TBI are under-identified because there is a lack of education awareness of TBI as a disability. In 2016, 75% of teachers have no training in TBI. 2018, 73% of school psychologists did not feel comfortable serving as case managers for a student with a TBI. So what I gave you was an overview of the last 34, now 35 years, documenting a need for educator training. But over the course of these years, new struggles have emerged. So it used to be that we would bring people together and do an in-service day or a training and try to get as much knowledge to folks as possible. But now, as budgets get tighter and tighter, we're dealing with struggles for lack of release time for educators, which directly is correlated to lack of finances in terms of providing substitutes or paying for in-services for them, and a general lack of of time. So at Seabird, we thought, okay, well, now what are we going to do? And we came up with creating an online platform to deliver that training to folks in a way that they can access on their own, in their own time, as they need it, and still get professional development units for their licenses. So this is what we did. We came up with a program called Concussion in the Classroom, Best Practices for Student Success. And you can see the main screen here. What it is it's 21 lessons divided into 9 different topic areas that are all online and available for people to do in their own time. It has evidence-based instructional strategies. So one of the things we thought is, let's make sure, because we're educators and we're giving this to educators, that the way we deliver this is, evidence-based in instruction, not just clicking through PowerPoint. So we tried to do some of the model lead test piece as much as we could emulate in a virtual setting. We provide video interviews from actual educators. There are, resources that can be printed out. There's a whole bunch of things that I'm going to go through with you right now. And I have a question. Let's see. Okay. That one I'll wait for later. And, okay. So one of the targets that we had was, what's different about TBI? And the reason we went with that was, we know, because we are educators and we work with educators a lot, that almost all educators are really good at what they do, and they have an amazing amount of skill. And so what we wanted to do is validate that and say, you guys all do a great job, but here's what's a little bit different about TBI, and here's how you can apply some of those amazing skills you have in a way that supports students with brain injury, but also supports all of your other students. We made sure that the topics we chose to cover were identified by educators. We did focus groups. We called in our national partners and brainstormed what is the most important information educators need. And we decided to focus on classroom teachers, general classroom teachers, more than our specialists. And that's because even when students are identified as needing special ed supports and specially designed instruction, they spend a majority of their day in their regular classroom with their regular education teachers who receive even less training on brain injury than their special education counterparts. So that's why we chose to focus on regular classroom teachers, but the information is also very valid for all specialists. So I have a quick little video I want to show you, and this is one of the reasons why we chose regular education teachers. This is a student telling us why he needs supports.
I really don't remember why I got sent to the office. When I came back to school, after a week in the hospital and a couple weeks at home, I don't know, I guess everyone thought that everything was okay. That all I had was a broken arm, but that everything else was good. But it wasn't good. My head felt really, foggy or something. I was tired all the time, and there are things I used to know that I just don't know anymore. Some of it has gotten a little better, but there are still a lot of things that used to be easy that are still really hard. What makes it worse is that people don't know I'm having problems. What am I supposed to say? I have a brain injury? Leave me alone? My teacher is supposed to remember, because I can't.
So just a little video about why students might need their educators to support them and be trained in brain injury. So moving on, a little bit about the content development. The literature that we created is based on evidence-based strategies. We used some of the LearnNet content. I don't know how many of you have looked at the LearnNet website, but it's very good and been around for a long time and has a ton of information that could be useful. We did interviews with educators. We partnered with great brain injury colleagues in Colorado, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Alabama who all helped us develop the content. And we created an educator advisory panel and consultants who helped us not only develop the content, but refine it and pare it down to an understandable amount, because there's so much information that we had to kind of pull it together in a way that could be delivered painlessly. So the whole premise of the program is that we want positive student outcomes for kids with brain injury. And we thought, okay, well, what do we know about this? How do we improve student outcomes? So our model is that we increase knowledge about brain injury in people, which then increases awareness and then helps folks apply the skills they know. So if those three things are increased and improved upon, we're hoping that student outcomes improve. So things like attendance and behavior and things that are harder to quantify, like how did the student feel in school today? How were their social interactions? What was their overall experience at school? And hopefully it was better and positive because the educators around them have better awareness, better knowledge, and therefore applying the skills that they have directly to those students with brain injury. This is our logic model for those of you who are interested in that. But basically, again, we're targeting educators of students with brain injuries. We are teaching people in an online setting, and we're increasing knowledge. And then in turn, educators have better intent, and therefore they apply the new knowledge, and the students have better outcomes. So in terms of instructional design for in the classroom, we used text, videos, printable forms, links, case studies, and interactive videos, and I will show you all of these things. So this is our home page for in the classroom. What it does is it welcomes the individual user or the group of users. And then off that home page, you can find a topic page. And what that topic page does is show you basically like an overview, kind of a syllabus of what the course has to offer. So you can see there's topics over here. You have return to school, and then within return to school, you have 2 lessons. So how is brain injury different from other disabilities, and returning to school after concussion. So as you're on the actual website, when you click on each of those topics, you can see the different lessons that are within that topic and choose the one that you would want to go through. And this is kind of a choose your own adventure design, meaning that you don't have to start at the beginning and work your way through. So if you're a teacher who has a lot of experience in accommodations and modifications, but you're really, really struggling with behavior and you just want to go straight to those behavior lessons, you can do that. This is just a schematic so you can see it all. So you can see the 9 different areas: parental communication, return to school, screening and services, accommodations and modifications, classroom strategies, promoting social interactions, behavioral and transition. And then underneath those, you can see the different lessons that are within those topics. So say I wanted to learn more about using technology to support student success. This is the main topic page for that one. So you go through and you read the overview, and then down at the bottom it says actions, continue to hear from an expert. So then if you go on to that, well, I guess I put them out of order, but so then it also has strategies for success, and this is for the folks who just really want to read it. So basically what we did is took 3 to 5 teaching points that we wanted to teach, and within strategies for success, you could just read those. This is just the top part of that with the screenshot, but for people who are readers and printers and those kind of things, that's there for you. Then you have see it in action. So this one was using technology, positive example and negative example. So like all good teaching, we show you what to do and what not to do, right? So you're able to to watch this educator apply those strategies for success with this student the correct way and the incorrect way. And this is what it looks like up close. So if you want to see it in action, I think, yes, there it is. But I will show you right now what that video is.
So you told me you have a wall calendar at home, right? But it's not really helping keep track of things. So I was thinking maybe we could learn how to use an app on your phone to help you stay organized. I know of one that a bunch of the students use and they really like.
Okay.
Okay, can I show you how to do it on your phone?
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna learn how to check your calendar. First thing you do is you find the calendar app, you click on it, comes up, and then you click on today's date, and there is your schedule for the day. Okay, so remember it's icon and then the date. Do you want to try it? All right, you got this. Perfect. Do you want to do it a few more times so you get it memorized? I'm going to stay right here. You just let me know if you need me.
Thanks. I think I can do this.
I know you can do this. And tomorrow we're going to learn how to put events into your calendar. And we're going to work on this a little bit every day until you can use the calendar app anytime you want by yourself.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Danny, it's time to talk about what's next for you.
Whoops, sorry.
I know what's next. I'm doing better, and I know what's next.
You have a wall calendar.
Oh, do you?
Hold on.
How many times do I have to say it? I'm going to college, I'm going to play basketball there, and I'm going to study journalism.
I had to stop the YouTube. Sorry about that. It kept going on. So that was one of our positive examples. And then again, we have a negative example. And I can show you that one. It'll probably do the YouTube thing again. So hang tight. Here we go. There we go.
So I remember you telling me that you have a wall calendar at home, but that it's not really working for you. So I thought maybe we should try using an app on your phone to help you keep track of things.
Okay.
Great. Most phones already have a calendar app on them. I'm sure yours does. Why don't you go ahead and find it?
I can't find it.
Let me try.
Never mind. We don't have to do this. This is too hard.
Okay, just let me know when you want to try again.
So you can see the positive and negative examples. Every single lesson and topic has those. We also have Hear from an Expert, and we thought, it's one thing to teach people with scripted videos, but it's another thing to identify with and hear from a person who's doing the same kind of work you're doing every day and hear their experiences with it. So we interviewed educators and specialists from Washington, D.C. area. This is Pam here talking about that, and I'll show you this video as well. Here we go.
So, technology and brain injury is an interesting aspect because when a student is first returning, one of the recommendations is to limit or avoid all screen time. But that doesn't mean that we can't use technology. So, for instance, using technology for a child to hear a book read aloud to them as opposed to having to read it themselves, helping them when they do have the opportunity to have screen time, organize themselves. So rather than writing down all of the homework in an agenda book, having them take a picture of what the homework is so that they have it is a great use of technology. Being able to push out information to them, so giving them the notes that you've provided in class digitally so that they have them and they're not spending their time trying to create the writing process. So there are ways that technology does help in the classroom. particularly with brain injuries, because our goal is to provide them with what they need so that they can continue to be successful.
So that was Pam talking about brain injury. And like I said, all the topics have that.
Technology.
Okay. So then each one of the lessons also has a case study. So we tried to identify with real students and situations that people might be dealing with. So here you can see the background of the student, and then again how the issues were addressed to support the student, and followed up with learn more. So this is the part where educators who are taking this get feedback. So you might be asked a question or a scenario, and I'll read it to you because I'm not sure you can see the small print, but it says, Darnell would like to be able to complete his homework assignment in class during free time. He has trouble staying focused, especially when there is noise and student activity around him, and he gets confused by the various steps in his assignments. Darnell loses track of what he's done and what is left to do, and usually ends up with more homework than he can do in one night. What tool could help Darnell? And then what happens is you select the correct answer and hit submit, and then you're given automatic feedback. So if you got the answer correct, it tells you why you got the answer correct. If you got the answer wrong, it tells you why you got the answer wrong. So reteaching if you're incorrect, and solidifying and validating your learning if you got it correct. So then to earn professional development units, there's a quiz at the very end that goes through all of the teaching points and checks for mastery of that new learning. And if you get 80% correct on the quiz, you are then auto-generated a certificate that can be used for professional development units. So everything we do in education is supposed to be evidence-based, right? So the last thing I'm going to talk about today is a little bit about the evaluation and why we believe that we have the start of evidence for this working. We looked at measures of educator knowledge, educator skill application, and self-efficacy. And we looked at self-efficacy because there's a lot of research that tells us that if somebody believes they can do something and wants to try, that they will initiate that action and be more likely to do those things. So we did a randomized control evaluation where we had 100 classroom teachers from Oregon and Ohio do this. We randomly assigned the educator to either the intervention, which was in the classroom that I just showed you, or LearnNet, which is one of the other available tools for learning about brain injury, and provided them with the 5 hours of content. So to go through the whole thing, it takes approximately 5 hours. Then we also did a quasi-experimental study within subjects with 81 educators from Evergreen, is the college in Washington. And these folks did it all online without supervision. So this is emulating what would happen in a real world situation. So if one of you who are on right now wanted to use it with an educator or yourself, or provide training for somebody, what it would look like without the clinical setting is this study. So we did both of them. And we asked questions to measure knowledge, like this one you can see on the screen. The 2 most common reasons a student exhibits problem behaviors are, and then they have to pick the 2 that are correct. The 2 in green are correct, in case you're wondering the answer to that question. And what we found is with our randomized control trial, we had statistically significant results in terms of knowledge gains. So from pre-test, everybody did a pre-test before they took the intervention, and post-test, we had an increase. And you can see the solid line is our folks that were in the intervention group or actually did the ITC or in the classroom intervention, and the other folks were the ones who are on LearnNet. So then if we overlay that with the people who were in the quasi-experimental group, we have the blue line here is the randomized control trial, and the green line is our quasi-experimental Washington educators. You can see that in the real world versus the clinical setting, the real world users actually outperformed the clinical setting users by a little bit, but very much emulated the same results between the two different studies. So then we thought, okay, well, you've learned the content, now can you apply it? So we gave people two things. We gave them scenarios that they read, and we gave them video-based scenarios. Here's an example. You're helping a student prepare for an upcoming social studies final. Your class has been covering one new chapter each week for the past 3 weeks, and the test will cover all 3 chapters. At the end of each chapter, the students took a quiz covering the main topics of the chapter. How can you help your student determine what he needs to know and what he needs to study more of? So then they had multiple choice questions at the end, and they picked that. But also, they were given a video scenario, kind of like the videos you saw earlier, where a student was having a problem, and then they had to type in what they would do. So with our randomized control trial, you can see again we had statistically significant results in knowledge application. And then if you add our quasi-experimental real-world evaluation, you can see again that they increased very similarly to the randomized control trial and did increase slightly more. So then I told you we looked at self-efficacy, and we basically gave folks scenarios and said, how confident are you that you could handle a situation like this? And we had them rank themselves on a 6-point Likert scale between strongly disagree and strongly agree. Here's some sample items. I can adapt the curriculum. I can break down a skill. I can manage a classroom, basically. And as you can see here, for those of you who are actually interested in what the statistics look like, we had really good results in terms of increase in self-efficacy as well. So that too was statistically significant. So, like all good educators, we wanted to know, over time, does this new learning last? And so what you see here are 2 bar graphs. The first one is showing the quasi-experimental study, and the second one is showing the randomized control. And what we did is 2 months after we got done, we retested people. We did a follow-up of maintenance. And you can see by looking at the chart that knowledge and self-efficacy maintained. So knowledge had a really large effect size in both studies. People maintained their new learning, and people had a moderate effect size in self-efficacy. So their belief that they could implement the new knowledge and belief that they could do this remained fairly strong. The one thing that tapered after 2 months was the knowledge application. So people struggled a little more after 2 months with applying the new learning. And you know, for us, what that means is our future implications are we need to figure out how to provide consultation and supports for people after they've acquired the new learning in terms of skill application. And that's something that is coming. We have plans for that at CBIRD. So then the last thing we asked is, how much did you like it, basically? What did you find the program easy to use? 98% of our participants thought it was easy to use. 96% said they didn't need any help using it. 100% thought they would learn to use the program quickly. 100% were confident using the program. 100% did not need to learn new things to use the program, which was really a big deal because we're already trying to teach new things. We don't want people to have to learn how to use the technology to use it. And 100% said they would recommend using the program to others. This is what our homepage looks like. If you're interested in learning more about in the classroom after concussion, go to learn.cbirt.org and it will help you learn about that and what you can do to access the program. The other place you can go is just cbirt.org. in the classroom is advertised on our homepage. This is a screenshot of the homepage. But also, if you're looking for resources in general, you can scroll through some of the tabs on siebert.org and find all kinds of useful information. Another thing you can do is if you're looking for more information about brain injury in general, is you can go to our Facebook page. It's Siebert Online, and we post all kinds of new research, all kinds of interesting articles, that kind of things about brain injury that is available and screened for you, so you don't have to wade through things. And that is what I have to say about in the classroom. There's a couple things. Sarah, she works with us. She's asking me to make sure I mention we have new pricing on it. It is for a non-organ educator and somebody who wants professional development units. It's $40 to access the entire program. So $40 for 5 hours of content and professional development units. And if you're a person who needs continuing education units, maybe to move up on the pay scale at work, it's $120 for your continued education unit. And we can help you navigate any of that. Sarah Brinker is our person who is helping with that. So you can email me and you can see my address and phone number. You can contact me, and what will happen is I will likely forward you on to Sarah, who will contact you about pricing or accessing the program. The other thing is, I think many of you on the call are organ educators. Because our Oregon Department of Ed funds a lot of our work, the program is free for organ educators. So if you need access for that, please contact me. You can email me or call me, and I will make sure if you're an organ educator, you have that. If you're not and you need information about the pricing or logging on or help or support or any of that, please also feel free to contact me. I put up the slide of the University of Oregon gate here with the snow, because that is what we are dealing with, and it looks like what the rest of the country is dealing with on and off right now. This is what it looked like just a couple days ago at the University of Oregon. So that is the end of my presentation. And here's some more contact information. I'll leave that one up for a little while. And again, thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, please reach out. Have a great day, everyone.